Alright, I'll admit it. I have a bit of a reputation for running late. Friends joke that you can always count on me, just 15 minutes later than everyone else. But this time, it really wasn't my fault. It was June 2024, and I was flying to Scotland for a long-awaited hiking trip. Just my friends, my backpack, a tent, and the promise of fresh air and breathtaking views. The only problem? The airport was a mess, and for good reason. The night before, Germany had just beaten Scotland 5-1 in the Euro 2024 football tournament. The terminal was packed with dejected Scottish fans heading home and ecstatic Germans still celebrating. Everything was behind schedule.
Final boarding call for flight LH2524 to Edinburgh.
By the time I got to the security, the line was insane. My flight was boarding and I wasn't even close to the scanners. So yeah, I did what every desperate traveler would do. I backed my way to the front. Some rolled their eyes, some let me through, and then after what felt like the longest baggage scan of my life, I sprinted to the gate. Like Olympic level sprinting. Did I make it? Just barely.
Welcome aboard.
And that got me thinking. Airports operate on really thin margins of error. It's a dance of timing, coordination, and precision. But when one thing goes wrong, everything falls apart. Welcome to Trust the Process, the podcast that demystifies the world of process mining and process intelligence. I'm your host, Angela, from the Celonis Academic Alliance, and today we're diving into one of the most complex, high-stakes and logistical operations in the world. Specifically, what happens behind the scenes of Munich Airport and Lufthansa to keep flights running smoothly, and what happens when they don't. But first, let's introduce today's guests. Julian Rodd is Head of Data and Processes at Munich Airport, and Maximilian Hoffmann is the Celonis Center of Excellence lead at Lufthansa. Between them, they've seen it all. Smooth takeoffs, unexpected delays, and full-blown disruptions. Airports are some of the most highly coordinated operational environments on the planet. But that coordination comes with a unique set of challenges. Max tells us a bit more about the challenges they face on a day-to-day basis.
Think about the airline. Think about you as a guest, right? So what do you do when you travel by plane, right? So the first thing you do is you book a flight, right? So for you, that's only, go to the website and you book the flight, and for you, it's done. On our side, a whole bunch of different things happen right before we even operate the flight. So we have your booking. We need to make sure that you have all the data and information that you can travel to certain countries, for example. We schedule how big the plane has to be depending on the size of the booking. So if we have a lot of bookings, we may take a bigger aircraft, sometimes we take smaller ones. So a whole lot of things are happening before we operate the flight, right? So we also need to schedule the crew, we need to make sure that we have the aircraft ready. So a lot of things happen in the planning beforehand.
So let's break it down. Airports and airlines operate within 4 major constraints. And if one thing goes wrong, the ripple effects are huge.
Airport business is teamwork. Yeah, so these processes are governed or are executed by different companies. So that is like one of the most big challenge in this situations is that the different companies work together. So you don't only have the airport, you have the airline, you have ground handling companies, and also like the passenger itself can influence the process. So when you look at the challenges, it is that these processes are quite interdependent. For example, when a passenger doesn't make it to the flight, but the bag was already loaded, okay, you need to think of, do we need to unload the bag of the passenger?
One small disruption in one part of the process can trigger a chain reaction impacting flights, staffing, and even security.
Because from an airline perspective, we're only making money if the plane is flying, right? So the idea or the goal is usually to have the aircraft on ground as little as possible and in the air as much as possible, because then you make money, then you can sell tickets. So the entire system is really built to handle all of these processes in very little time. So if you think about like a short flight from, let's say, Munich to Budapest or so, you only have like 40 to 45 minutes on the ground to get everything into the place, right? You need to get the crew in there, you need to get the people from the previous flight off, the new people on, you need to have it clean, and so on and so forth. So you have a lot of things happening in parallel, and not only happening in parallel for one particular flight, but for the entire airport system.
And that's 40 to 45 minutes for a process with thousands of moving parts. Any delay can cascade, causing missed connections, flight cancellations, and millions in losses.
Things like weather, so extreme storm, snowfall, or whatever, that are sometimes then also things that you can't influence, right? So nobody can influence the weather.
So a single snowstorm in Munich can delay flights in New York, and a major event can cause security queues to back up for hours. And no matter how much planning goes into it, there's always an element of unpredictability.
In aviation, there's zero tolerance for failure, right? So we always need to make sure that we have safe and secure aircraft. You cannot ignore it. And you cannot ignore like the check engine light. So safety is always first, and we always need to make sure that, you know, we have a safe and reliable aircraft. Otherwise, it's not going into service.
Safety always comes first. No shortcuts, no compromises. But that also means delays when things don't go as planned.
Those machines, they have millions of parts. Eventually something's going to break, right? And you always need to be prepared for that.
So how do airlines and airports keep everything moving? And what happens when they don't? After this break, we'll find out by following two parallel journeys at Munich Airport. You and your bag.
AI's got a trash problem. It's getting garbage in, so it's putting a lot of garbage out. AI is powerful, but it's only as good as the processes and data it's working with. That's why at Celonis, we make processes work and give AI the data and context it needs, like rules, benchmarks, and KPIs, so it knows what makes something good or bad for business, and AI can go from letdown to breakthrough. Search Celonis, CELONIS, to make AI work.
You arrive at Munich Airport dragging your suitcase behind you. You're flying to New York for a business trip. At the check-in counter, you hand over your passport and luggage. The airline agent prints your boarding pass, tags your suitcase, and places it on the conveyor belt. While you walk towards security, your suitcase is already on a separate journey. Julian from Munich Airport explains.
So you can distinguish three main processes from an airport's perspective. Yeah? So the one is the passenger process. That's obviously the process that every passenger who has already flown directly experiences. So you check in, you go through the security check, maybe you buy something at the shop or eat in a restaurant, and then you board into the flight. And in parallel, there is the baggage handling process ongoing. So if you have a bag, then you check in your bag, and the bag will be proceeded by our baggage handling system until someone from the ground handling companies loads it into the aircraft. And the third parallel process, which is running there, is the aircraft process. So that's already something that Maxi has just talked about a bit, where various parallel processes are ongoing. And I would say what the most interesting thing is that these three processes, they need to go hand in hand. Yeah, so it's really important that the passenger, the baggage, and the aircraft process are aligned. So that, I would say, are like the three main processes from an airport's perspective. And in addition to that, you also have all these processes to build up all the infrastructure, obviously. So that are more like the processes which happen beforehand, so that you build terminals, runways, provide all the facilities.
You queue for security screening and step through the scanner. Meanwhile, your suitcase is rolling on an underground conveyor belt, heading for baggage security screening. Max describes this process.
We have a baggage handling system, of course, that's fully automated, but there's people loading stuff into containers, there's people loading aircraft, people cleaning aircraft.
While you are heading to your gate, your suitcase has taken an entirely different route. It's now in the baggage sorting area, where high-speed belts sort thousands of bags per hour, sending each one to its assigned flight. As you sip coffee at the gate, ground crews below are busy. Your suitcase has arrived at the aircraft's loading area. It's scanned once more, matched to the passenger manifest, and loaded into the plane's cargo hold. Max elaborates.
So the variety of processes is just, too much for one podcast to tell you, because it's hundreds of processes going on. And, roughly one number that we always use is you have between 15 and 20 processes going on in parallel just to make the aircraft ready to depart, right? And that's only on the very day of the operations.
Finally, both you and your bag are en route to your destination. Upon landing, you head to immigration while your suitcase is offloaded and sent to the baggage reclaim area. It undergoes another scan to confirm it's on the correct belt for you to pick it up.
So you check in, you go through the security check, maybe you buy something at the shop or eat in a restaurant, and then you board into the flight. And in parallel, there is the baggage handling process ongoing.
As you reach baggage claim, you spot your suitcase on the carousel. Reunited, both you and your bag have navigated two completely separate, yet interconnected journeys. Each optimized by process intelligence, ensuring the perfect travel experience. But what if something goes wrong? Sometimes delays occur. Missed connections, mishandled baggage, last-minute aircraft changes. And this is where process intelligence steps in. By monitoring real-time data, airlines and airports can reroute bags, predict delays, and proactively notify passengers of any disruptions. Julian adds,
You depart from Munich Airport and you make it to the flight and your bag doesn't. So that is obviously something we want to avoid.
At its core, the airline industry is a dance of interconnected processes.
But that is also where I would say the beauty of OCPM comes in place, because in the past, you would have had to build up like a new process mining event log for every kind of use case you want to analyze, because every use case kind of involves different objects. And that's, I think, what the beauty could be here, is that there are these many objects, and it is possible to start with a few of them. So start with like baggage, passenger, and aircraft, and then later on add objects like cargo or fueling into this overall data model without like having to redo all the stuff again.
OCPM, Object-Centric Process Mining, creates a connected view of all airport operations, revealing how different objects interact. A single flight isn't just about one passenger or one plane. It's a web of relationships, each impacting the next.
So you have one passenger, obviously. One passenger could have 0 or many bags. There's usually one aircraft, but that one aircraft has maybe 1 to 580 passengers, depending on the size of the aircraft. So you have that. Also, the aircraft contains the bags, for example, and the containers where they are stored into. So you have basically relationships between all of those 3 objects. Some of them are one-to-one, one-to-many, or sometimes even many-to-many, right?
This connected view makes it easier to detect potential issues even before they escalate. Instead of viewing processes like silos, OCPM visualizes them in all their glorious complexity and interconnectedness.
So you would see the different, let's say, swim lines or subway lines, as we sometimes refer to them. And you see that, your passenger made it onto the flight, the passenger checked in. You can also see that the luggage has been dropped off. And at some point, you see that the passenger is boarding the aircraft, right? And you would expect the bag to also go on the aircraft. And eventually, at the time of the departure, you have a passenger that has a relationship to the aircraft and also a bag that has the relationship to the aircraft. But you're missing that one relation, right, where you don't have the bag to the aircraft. And that's where you would immediately see that, okay, my bag is not in Munich, it didn't arrive in Munich, but it's still stuck in New York.
With OCPM, airports and airlines can proactively manage disruptions, ensuring that processes stay in sync. After this break, we'll imagine what happens when every part of the airport works in perfect harmony. and what the airport of the future could look like.
Imagine your dream role in process excellence, business analytics, or digital transformation, just one click away. Introducing ProcessMiningJobs.com, where top talent meets top opportunity. Whether you're searching for your next big move or looking to hire the best in the business, this is where careers accelerate and teams level up. Because the future of work is all about matching minds and markets. Explore opportunities and discover what's next at ProcessMiningJobs.com.
So, what does the future of airport operations look like? Let's imagine an airport where processes don't just react to problems, but predict and prevent them.
For me, that there is no boundaries and there is no barriers, right? Because the whole system is a symbiosis, right? So one party and one company cannot live without the other one, right? And we're forgetting that a lot. So my idea is we tear down all of these walls, we tear down all of the silos that we have, and we work together with the legal boundaries that we have, also when it comes to antitrust and so on and so forth. But in that kind of framework that we have, we do not think about this industry and these processes in terms of different companies, but as one large system.
Imagine predictive AI that reroutes passengers automatically when a flight is delayed. Luggage that tracks itself. Real-time data that tells ground crews exactly where bottlenecks arise, even before they cause a problem. The airport of the future is all about digital integration. And process intelligence is making it happen. Airports may be chaotic, but they don't have to be. By connecting processes, breaking down silos, and using real-time intelligence, the future of air travel looks much smoother.
I would say it's the first time that it is actually possible to build that discussion on a fact-based ground. Yeah, so that is really quite a new change, but with a very positive twist.
Thanks for listening to Trust the Process. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who spent too much time stuck at the airport. In our next episode, we explore the ethics of process intelligence and the tough question of how to get maximum insight out of minimum data. See you next time, and remember, when processes work, everything works.